Welcome to the latest edition of Lexington Remembers. My name is Dan Fenn, and I'm delighted to have as our guest today Joe Busa, a very famous, distinguished Lexington family. Where did the family come from originally?
Sicily. They originally came from Sicily.
So who was the first?
Antonio. Well, they wanted to come to this country. They were about 16 years old when Antonio came, I think. And he ended up in Waltham, working on a dairy farm to make money to bring the other brothers over.
He worked in Waltham in a dairy farm, and then what happened?
He sent the money back, brought two more brothers over, Frank, the second oldest, and my father John, the third oldest. And they three of them worked together to bring over the other brother and to buy the land.
Okay.
They had a 100-acre farm.
And this is where?
In Lexington, East Lexington, down near the Arlington Reservoir.
And it's still there?
Oh, yes.
And it's still a working farm?
No, well, it is. The town of Lexington owns it.
It's a great family story.
The four brothers. They, as we were growing up and going into school, they pushed us for sports. They wouldn't even let us smoke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when we come of age, you know, when everybody was
Yeah.
trying to get a cigarette. So
Yeah.
we had, and they would encourage us to go out for sports, and only in the wintertime or the fall when this farm wasn't working.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Now, there was enough Busa boys. We had our own football team. We had two hockey teams because we were on the reservoir,
Oh, yeah.
and two basketball teams, all
No
Busas.
kidding. And you all went to the Lexington school.
Yes.
And where did you go? Where was the high school?
That was the half high school and half junior high.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, this is not high school.
Yeah.
See, now we were very heavy in sports,
Yeah.
and I was captain of the basketball team in 42, state champs.
Really?
And if you go down to the high school, you'll see the trophy in the
I'll
glass
bet,
case.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before March come in, I got a letter from the government army.
So you were drafted.
I was drafted.
Yeah.
So I got in there and in 42, and I drove in, had my car parked out front because I was 18.
Ah, they were going to draft you right out of school.
So, yeah. Well, they weren't. They're going to take my physical. Then I have to wait.
Yeah.
I kind of screwed up that a little bit when I got into Commonwealth Avenue, and I took my physical. I was there all day. There was about 300 of us, and I was tired. And I called my father up, and I says, look, I'm getting dressed. I'm going outside. I'm going to get in that line, and I'll be home. So I went outside, and I looked at the long line. I didn't want that one. That was a real long line. I got in the short line, which moved very fast, and I get up to the desk. The guy stamps my paper. He says, the bus will be here in a half an hour for you. So I had to call my father up, tell him where I left the key, and him and my uncle come down and took the car home, and I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky that night.
That night?
And I never come home for 3 years.
Yeah.
The long line is when you had to wait for them to go through your papers and stamp them and go home. But I didn't go. I went in the short line. I didn't know that's what it was.
You didn't know that was the one that was going to sign you in?
Yeah, immediate induction.
I see. That was a mistake.
It was, but it was a good one because I was working on a farm, and even when you were in the grade schools, we had a bus that used to bring us home and pick us up. And they told us that when we get home, we had a half an hour to change our clothes, get a sandwich, and be out to go to work.
Uh-huh.
That went on for a long time.
Uh-huh. Now, how did you feel about going into the service?
Oh, I didn't mind it at all. I was getting away from the farm.
Yeah, I see. Okay. What was Fort Knox? What was that?
That was an armored division.
I see. And,
Yeah.
And they didn't ask you. They just put you in the army.
Well,
division.
yeah. They wanted any man they could get
Yeah.
because it was, 42.
Yeah.
We got a slack period. And
Yeah.
and they said, well, you can't go home. So what do you want to do? And I said, well, I always wanted to fly a plane, just like that. He says, okay. And they sent me up to North Carolina to be a pilot for a P-38. So I was there a month to fly a plane. It was a Piper Cub. Start with that. And about 11 o'clock, they come in. One great big guy, oh, God, he must have been 6'6", and he weighed about 300 pounds. He got us all out of bed. He says, you, and you, get dressed. You're going with me right now. We're going down to Virginia. You're going overseas as tank men again.
How did they get the tank? The tanks go over in the same ship?
Oh, no, there were tanks over there.
Oh, I see.
But I tell you what, when I landed there, I was
Where'd
put
you
in
land?
Sorrento, and then we went up by train to Naples,
Yeah.
then to Caserta.
Yeah.
So
I know Caserta.
I was in the Caserta for a while, and
Now, where were the Germans at that point?
right there,
In Caserta.
down further, they
Yeah.
were in Monte Cassino.
Yes, okay.
They
That was
had
a
that.
terrible battle.
Oh, God, they were like rats.
Yeah.
The Polish people were there, and he had like 100 men that were trying to climb that mountain to get up there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, up come the trap doors. When they were halfway up, the machine guns come down and killed them all.
Yeah.
And they got angry. And the Germans always said that they were holding 90 people hostage from the town so they wouldn't bomb them. And the Polish said, we don't care. We lost almost 1,500 men here, and we're going to bomb you. So they did. And when the bombing was over, there was no hostages.
You were stationed in Caserta with your tank, right?
Yes, I was assigned the 4th Armored Division.
And you were in Caserta.
Yeah, but
And
I
how
was
many-
still
which-
with the men,
Which kind of a tank?
Sherman tank,
Okay, and how many men did that carry? Four.
4. 2, 1 driver, 1 assistant driver, who also ran the machine gun. And I ran the cannon. I had a radio man that helped me inside. And we got along good.
What was your rank?
I was temporary sergeant.
Temporary buck sergeant, 3
Yeah.
stripes.
Yep.
And you were in
There,
command
I
of
got
the,
there. There's a picture of me with the stripes on.
uh-huh. And so you were in charge of the tank and you
Right.
were a buck sergeant.
Yes.
And what about the other guys? What rank did they
Well,
have?
there were corporals, but I was the highest one.
Yeah.
And I had to work up. If we had the tank, I would already become a staff sergeant.
I see.
So that some could become a buck sergeant. I
Yeah.
think the radio man was a corporal,
Yeah.
and the other 2, I don't think they had. They're like PFCs.
So you're in Caserta, and the battles are going on at Monte Cassino, and this is in the spring of '43.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happened?
Well, we were kind of when the Polish people bombed it. That kind of ended the Germans right there. But before that, they used to take us on, when they weren't out with the tanks and that, I was taken on what were they called? They used to drop from airplanes onto the mountain soldiers.
Oh, yeah,
And
the
we went up-
10th Mountain Division.
Yeah, we went up as pallbearers. No, not pallbearers, litter bearers, to get the wounded out. And when we got there, I had another guy that was with me. He was scared stiff because there were snipers. So you could hear the bullets going by. And we were carrying out one guy that was injured pretty badly. And all of a sudden, a bullet zipped by his head. He got scared. He dropped the litter and took off.
Oh, really?
And I'm on the ground, and I could hear the bullets go, but they couldn't see me because it was in the brush. So I grabbed this soldier, and I said, look, let's crawl in the woods a little bit, and you get your arms around my neck, and I'll crawl up to the top. And I did. I brought
With
him
this
up.
wounded guy.
With a wounded guy, he hung on to me, and I dragged him up from, because I crawled on the ground. Otherwise, if I stood up, I would have got hit.
Yeah. Yeah. And whereabouts was that?
That was a little bit north of Monte Cassino, yeah,
Yeah.
because everything is mountains in there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I remember. Then there was a pretty clear run, as I remember it, up to Rome. When did the
Yeah.
Germans...
Well, see,
Dig in
Rome was
again.
the other way, up
Yeah.
along the west coast.
Right.
And the only time I got up there was after the war.
Yeah.
I went to Rome
Yeah.
for about 2 days.
Just
A
after
weekend.
the war was all over.
Yeah.
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 But you had this rescue duty to do
Yeah.
from time
Yeah.
to time.
I crawled up, and then until they could reach me, and then they grabbed him, brought him in, and the other guy I never saw him again, because he was in my tent.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, and he never come back. I don't know what they did with him, whether they arrested him or what.
He just took off.
Yeah, because he dropped the thing, the litter, but I don't know how he got back. I think they arrested him.
I
Because
guess
they
they
didn't do it.
probably did.
Yeah, but I never knew.
Huh. Did you know him well?
No, I met him when we got in that tent.
I see. Okay. So then what happens?
Well, after that, we got Monte Cassino was done,
Yeah.
and while we were waiting for them to come out and drop the guns, there was a lieutenant that came up, walked up to me, and were near the fence, and all these guys that were near me all had rifles, and I didn't. I had a .45.
No carbine.
No carbine, because you couldn't.
Yeah.
You're in a tank. You can't
Oh, yeah, right.
put it up.
Right.
So he come up to me, and all of a sudden he takes his gun out. Well, geez, all our guys, they turned around and started to point the rifle at him. And he shook his head no. He flipped the gun over, handed it to me, and says, you don't have a rifle. You take my gun, and please take care of it, in broken English. And I have it today.
Really?
I have it today.
And what was this?
It was a .38 Mauser.
And this is a Italian?
German.
German
German.
lieutenant.
Yeah.
He'd been captured.
Yeah. So they were all coming out, but they had to drop their armament. But he
I
walked
see.
up to me,
And gave it to you.
gave me the gun, said, take care of it. And I had it, when I got home, I had it registered. And it's fired every time I have to get my license renewed.
That's a bizarre story,
Yeah.
Joe.
I still have it today. I had it out the other day just to make sure I know how to work
So
it.
then you're tracking the Germans because they're
Right.
going.
So we
up.
went up, and I was in the rear, And when we get up to this plaza, I don't know what it was. This is where Mussolini was.
Oh, Milan.
Milan, okay. So there was about 100 Italian soldiers there. No armament, nothing. They come up to my commander and they said, we're going to show you how faithful we're going to be to you people. So he says, okay. He says, so we're going to go in and we'll get him. So they went in, 10 of them went in the building where Mussolini was. We heard shots. They didn't say anything about shooting. And next thing you know, they dragged Mussolini and his mistress out by the legs, hung him upside down in the plaza until they were cut down.
And you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know was that I had an uncle there, and he was looking for me.
Really?
But he didn't know he was looking with the soldiers,
Yeah.
and I was in the armament.
Yeah.
So I didn't know he was there.
Yeah.
They called me in and said everybody was going home. So I figured, oh boy, I'm going home. I'm almost 3 years in.
Finally.
So they said, you can't go home. I says, why not? He says, well, there's 3 weeks that you're short of 3 years. Short of being in 3 years. So you have to stay here for 3 weeks, and we're going to put you in the 300 General Hospital. They need help. So they put me in the 300 General Hospital as an X-ray technician. And I didn't know anything about an X-ray technician, but they taught me a little bit. But in the meantime, I asked him for some time off. He said, how much have you had? I says, I haven't had anything since I've been in.
Right.
So he says, I'll give you 10 days. Where are you going? I says, I'll go down to Sicily and see some of my father's people. Okay. He says, but you can't go alone. So there was another guy that wanted to go to Sicily. He had an aunt that was a nun. It was right near Messina, not Messina. What was it? Right across? Was that Messina? Yeah. Okay, that was Messina. And so he came with me. And we could see when we were walking down the street to go to see his aunt first after we got off the train. And we could see the people up in the window with the guns. They were Italian, but they didn't know whether we were the enemy or the good people.
Ah, okay.
So we finally, I guess somebody told them that we're visitors, we're American soldiers. So we went and saw his aunt, and he came with me to see my relatives, and we had a good time for a few days there. And I saw my uncle that was up there at where Mussolini was.
Yeah?
I saw him, and he was tickled pink to meet me. And he had a son who was also named Joe, and he was in the train department. He was fixing trains and sending them all over.
Oh,
Yeah.
Was the war over by
Yes,
this time?
it was over in Italy, yeah. Once Mussolini was done, the war ended.
Yeah, but that would have been...
That's just Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the war, and I thought we were going down when I finally get on the boat. We had one of these smaller boats, and it had people all downstairs. They had soldiers up on the deck.
Yeah.
And I said to the guys beside me, there was 3 of them. So I says, we better get off the deck. I says, if this ship goes down and up, I says, we're going to be like boards.
Yeah.
So with the salt. So we climbed up the life rafts. They were about 10 high.
Yeah.
And
Liberty ship, this was.
Liberty ship,
Yeah.
that's what it was. So we got in there, and we had to stay there, 4 of us, because if 2 left to go down to the bathroom or go to eat, the other 2 waited until they come back, and then they went down and they stayed there. Otherwise, somebody on deck would have climbed and got a hold of our home.
Oh,
So we were 14 days on that ship.
yeah. Europe was still going on.
Yes, it was still going on, I think, a little bit up in Belgium and that. What do they call that one there? The
Bulge?
Bulge. Yeah.
So
That was on
April.
the downhill. Yeah.
It was April of 45. So you
Yeah.
went home when the war in Europe was still going
Yeah.
because you'd been in for 3 years.
3 years. Anyone 3 years can be discharged. So I ended up in Virginia, and they put me on a train.
Hampton Roads?
I don't know what, I
Probably.
think so.
Yeah.
And they put me up to Fort Devens.
Right.
So
I
I was,
can still smell that coal smoke at Fort Devens.
oh
You
yeah,
remember?
yes. I was there for about a week. And then my commander come up to me and he said, I want you to go home for the weekend and come back with your car like nothing happened. He says, I'm going to declare you absent without leave, AOL. And he says, then I'll discharge you. So I come back and they took my car and they brought me up to his office and he sat me down. He had papers and everything. And within 2 days, I was home.
And that was the first time you'd been home since you got an active duty.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know, when I left the farm, there was no tractors or no nothing. It was all horses.
Yeah.
And when I got back, my father called me and he says, come into the barn. He says, I want to show you
They
something.
must have been awful glad to see you after
Oh, yeah.
3 years.
Well, when I was at different places, when they didn't need us too much, they used to always send us out for more training.
Oh,
And my father came down one time to the Carolinas, him and his uncle and his brother, and they visited me there.
when you were traveling home on the Liberty ship,
Yeah,
were you in convoy or were you just...
no, we came home alone because the ship was fast and didn't need any
No destroyers or
Right, nothing.
air cover or
No.
anything?
going over. We needed it,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah,
coming
I
back
remember
because
that.
see,
I remember
the
that.
Germans were just about all done.
Yeah. They didn't have much
No.
U-boat action either.
Right.
That must have been quite an experience when you walked in the door
Oh yeah,
back here after 3 years.
big changes. So he took me in this barn.
Yeah.
And he said, we went over something. He pulled this sheet off, and it was a tractor.
Yeah.
Never had tractor. When I left, we had horses.
Yeah.
The horses were gone, but we were machinery.
Yeah.
So we had the tractor, and he had the tractor hooked up so that it would bring the vegetables in to be cleaned and washed and packed and sent on the trucks to go to
Boston.
Boston.
Yeah.
And I used to drive them into, what was that down? We used to stop at Scully Square.
Yeah. And the Haymarket.
Haymarket.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a salesman there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, by the time I got there, about 11, 12 o'clock, he'd have most of the loads sold because they knew my father's was a good grower.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd go by these different wholesalers and drop off what they bought.
Yeah.
And then
I see.
finally, my father would say, okay, I'm going home because everything is sold. He says, you stay and you go down where the horse barns are, that they still had horses there, and bring back a load of manure.
Ah, okay.
That had to go this way.
Yeah. How many truck farms were there in Lexington?
Oh, there was a lot.
Yeah.
One is still going.
Yeah.
You know, we needed
You're
extra
talking
money.
about Wilson?
Yeah, Wilson. Yeah.
They're the only ones
Yeah.
left.
We went by there,
The
and we were
Vincent
in
had
East
one.
Lexington, and
Yeah.
so from them they helped me get started on a roadside stand.
Oh, really?
And
Now,
also-
Barney Tocho lived there,
Yeah,
and he had a truck farm.
yeah.
And
And Mahoney's in Winchester.
yeah,
They used to come over. I knew them.
Yeah.
And they all helped me get started. And I did that for a couple of years until I got married. And I found out that there's not enough money when you have to divide it up 6 ways. So I had a good amount of money coming from the government. And I bought a place in Concord, a flower shop.
Oh, that flower shop Wayside,
Yes.
which I patronized because Wayne runs it.
Yeah.
I get all my stuff from there.
Yeah. I started out with one.
So you started with Wayside.
I had to go to night school to learn how to do the flowers, and I liked it. And from there, I expanded to the Hanscom. I had a flower shop there, and then I wanted one in Lexington. That's where I came from. It was on Waltham Street.
Yeah.
And then the other one was, I bought, a cousin of mine had it, and he didn't like it, so he sold it to me. It was in Waltham.
Yeah.
I had a physical to go to, and I went there, and the doctor says to me, "You've been working 7 days a week all your life in the service and whatever." He says, "Your lips are starting to change color." He says, "If you don't get out of there, you're going to die." So I said, okay. That's why I told Wayne to run it. I bought a motorhome, took off.
Did you? No kidding.
Went all over. The only place I wouldn't go was to Alaska because the road was stoned, and no
see.
hot top.
Yeah.
Because
Really?
I got married in 50,
Uh-huh.
and then I moved to Concord in 50.
Okay. So you left Lexington in 1950.
Yeah.
And you're still living in Concord?
No, come out to Middleborough, and that way we saw a place there, and Oak Point it's called, and that's where I am today.
Yeah. You miss Lexington?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know it. I was in there today, and I'm telling you, the streets look different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a few that's still there.
Not too many people around who can look back to 75 years. How does that war experience look to you? How did that?
Well, I didn't mind. It was better than being on a farm.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't like that.
No, I was in a tank, and I didn't mind it a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I never had to carry a rifle or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And you met some pretty interesting. Did you keep up with the guys you knew during the war?
They were all from New York.
Oh,
All my friends are from New York.
yeah.
So they kind of went each.
Drifted away. Yeah.
And they started dying.
Well, I know. As I say to people, there are a lot of perks of old age, but losing comrades is
Yeah.
not
it's
one of them.
No, I know it.
It's tough. It's
Yep.
tough. Well, gee, this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
It's been a great
Been nice
chance
talking to you.
to chat.
Never had